Welcome to Boardroom Buddha, the show that shares the lessons and hard-earned wisdom of entrepreneurs and tries to find the answers to how, why, and what were you thinking. I'm your host, Ray Appen. Joining me today is Karen Cashion, CEO of Tech Alpharetta, the city of Alpharetta's tech incubator, and one of the most interesting stories I've done in a long time. So, Karen, why don't we just start out by give us the snapshot of who you are and how you got into this, running this Tech Alpharetta, and then let's talk about actually what it is.
Sure. And thanks, Ray, for having me on today. So I'm currently CEO of Tech Alpharetta, and we are a 501c6 nonprofit organization that was originally started by the city of Alpharetta under the name the Alpharetta Technology Commission in 2012. Prior to stepping into this role, I had been practicing law for more than 20 years in the technology and software licensing arena. Wow. That's just a little snapshot of my background.
Okay. Yeah, I imagine you kept busy. I can't imagine being in that aspect of law, but
yes, always busy.
So Tech Alpharetta, let's assume, part of our audience at least really has no idea what Tech Alpharetta is. So why don't we just kind of walk them through what is Tech Alpharetta and what do you provide? What's your mission?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we are a nonprofit, and our mission is to help grow technology and innovation in the city of Alpharetta. And we currently have 3 strategic pillars to our organization. So as you mentioned, we do have the startup incubator for tech startups, and that's one, but not all of our organization, one piece, but not all of our organization. Another piece of the organization is hosting technology thought leadership events in the city of Alpharetta for tech executives. And we host those on average at least once a month throughout the year. And then our third strategic pillar is our strategic advisory board, which is a board currently of 29, most of whom are senior level, C-level technology executives from local technology companies who help to not only provide advice and guidance in connection with this organization and how to grow it, but also help provide strategic guidance to the city of Alpharetta on tech infrastructure and developing technology that the city may want to focus on as it goes forward.
Okay. So you've got a wealth of talent in Alpharetta, and it sounds like you've got a good portion of them working with you.
Yes. It's a great group.
So you have a physically, what is your physical presence in Alpharetta?
So our physical presence is our tech startup incubator known as the Tech Alpharetta Innovation Center. We're located kind of around the corner from here on Webbridge Road, just down from the new City Center development and City Hall, in the building located directly behind the fire station. Okay. And that's a city-owned building that the city has graciously permitted us to use. And we currently have 50 tech startups in our incubator, and that's about the average at any given time. We may range a few more than that, a few less, but that's typically the average.
Wow. They're not all in there at one time.
No, thankfully not. It's a 24/7 facility, and so our startup members come and go according to their own schedules. But that is the sum total of our membership. And some come in the evening, some on weekends, some are there every day, some might only get to show a couple days a week. So everybody has a different schedule, and that way it works without overflowing the center.
Okay. So if I'm a startup, what do you offer? How can you help me? What's in the physical building?
So in the physical building, we have office spaces as well as what we call co-working spaces, hot desks or large conference tables where our members can come and grab a workspace basically at any time and sit down and work in quiet. So our offices, we sublease out to tech startups, and the co-working spaces our members can just grab any one of those at any time. We also have conference rooms that many of our members can take advantage of, several kitchens, and an event space as well that holds about 100 people. Would be a little bit crowded in there, but we've done it. About 55 seated and maybe 100 standing.
Okay. So what's kind of a profile of your typical, if you have 50 startups that are using the facility now, what does that look like? Is it one person and an idea, or where are they in the spectrum of starting up?
That's a great question. And really, they're at all stages of coming through what we refer to as the funnel. So we'll have some startups there that are really early stage. It might just be one person and an idea. And then we'll have a startup in our largest office with 10 employees that's already, developed their software or product and is out in the market selling it or is actively fundraising. And those companies that are closer to 8 to 10 individuals, we refer to as further down in the funnel. After about 10 employees, they won't be able to fit in our center anymore.
Okay.
And at that point, they naturally matriculate out and go out into the community for commercial space. So it's really a mix in terms of the stages of companies. But as I mentioned, 10 is about the maximum size. And at that point in time, they do what we call graduate out of the center and move out into the community.
Okay, and hopefully they all stay in Alpharetta, right?
That's the goal, absolutely.
Okay. So what's the cross-section of what they're working on? Are they fintech? Are they medtech? I know it's probably all across the board, but...
It is. Their businesses range across all verticals of technology, and we don't have a specific requirement that they have to all be fintech startups, for example, or another type of startup. So we really see a little bit of everything. We've got, fintech, smart cities, startups, autonomous vehicles, cybersecurity, healthcare IT, data analytics, manufacturing process. Really, all the verticals you hear and read about, we typically see represented at the center.
Wow. Do you if one wanted to kind of follow what's going on at Alpharetta Tech, do you have a newsletter, or
we do?
How would one follow your newsletter?
Yeah, so we have an e-newsletter that we send out once a week, and we have a contact database of about 2,500 currently, almost all of whom are technology executives in the local area, North Fulton, South Forsyth, typically. And so they can subscribe to that e-newsletter if they'd like to receive it. You don't have to be in technology to receive it, obviously. So that's a great way to follow what's happening at the center and in the local tech community as well, because we use that newsletter to promote upcoming events that we're holding out in the community, to announce a startup that might be graduating from the center, or perhaps to announce some significant news of an acquisition or an exit in the local tech community.
Okay, so I would probably go to
techalpharetta.com. Yes, and under Contact Us, our Contact Us link, you'll see a place where you can click on a box and sign up to subscribe to our e-newsletter. And we also have a really significant social media presence thanks to our wonderful outside PR firm, Trevelino Keller, that handles all of our social posts.
Okay. Perfect. So you have office space 24/7. How involved is your board in giving? I mean, do people? I know a lot of these folks are millennials. They're younger. I mean, is there an active interchange of experience with these startups?
Well, I'm smiling because you mentioned millennials, and what makes us fairly unique, because we are a suburban incubator, we have no millennials in our center. So our startups are all run by whom we refer to as executive entrepreneurs. These are business people that have been out typically in big corporate for 1 to 3 decades, saw a gap in technology and said, okay, I'm going to go create the technology for this, and I'm going to go start up my own company, and left to do just that. So, and when you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense. If you look at the makeup of our suburban community, it is heavily skewed towards, 30-something and up, I would say, married, most likely, kids, house, et cetera. And that's exactly the makeup of our center as well. So it's a lot of really experienced executive entrepreneurs. We started there was a game room in the facility when I came on board. I quickly noticed that nobody ever used the games in the game room, and we converted it to office space. So it's a very different crowd, and I understand that we're very unique in terms of the incubators in the metro area for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, you say incubator, and you think, okay, well, there's foosball tables and
exactly people
and
skateboarding
kegs
around
of
or something. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's a very serious crew. They are heads down, and there's not a lot of noise in the center because they're very, very serious. I didn't really answer your question, did I, about how they would interact?
Yeah.
With, for example, board members or area companies. So a lot of these startups may have come from one of the local companies or a company downtown, but they're pretty much, they're there heads down on their own trying to build their businesses. So when we can connect them with a technology company in the community that could be a good resource for them, whether that's for mentoring or potential business or a potential strategic partnership, we do try to make every effort to do so. And the companies for example, on our strategic advisory board, our members are always very, very open to being introduced to our startups and trying to help in whatever way they can.
Okay, so you don't have like support groups where all the entrepreneurs get in a room and...
Oh, we do.
Do you?
Oh, yeah, we definitely do. We have a program called 1 Million Cups, a Kauffman Foundation program that meets once a week that's for entrepreneurs that usually we have about 30 people every Wednesday morning that come in and one of them pitches in front of the group and the rest provide, not really Shark Tank, it's a friendlier version of Shark Tank, but provide feedback to the group. And that's a very, very popular program. And then we also, ATDC runs its Alpharetta Startup Circle out of our center every Friday morning. And that's a group of startups led by one of ATDC's, what they call catalysts, one of their experienced mentors that's trying to give back to the community, that helps lead discussions on topics of concern or a problem that a startup ran into, and everybody chimes in to talk about what they've encountered and how they've gotten through it. So we definitely do have several of those great support group type atmospheres.
And those are, if you want, are they open to the public or?
They are, actually. Both of them are open to the public. The ATDC Startup Circle is really very, very startup specific. So, the public may or may not be that interested in what goes on there, but they're always welcome to come check it out. That's Friday mornings from 9 to 10:30. And 1 Million Cups runs every Wednesday morning from 8 to 9.
Okay, perfect. It sounds like maybe a good source for stories for us. Maybe we'll
I'd love to have you guys come on over and check that out. Yeah.
Okay. What is there a threshold? How is there a threshold where someone gets admitted to the incubator, or how does that work? I think some people out there, some folks out there might think, oh well, I'm not far enough along, or my idea is not cool enough, or what are the hoops that you have to get through to be in the incubator or to get the space and stuff like that? Sure.
Basically, you have to have a tech startup that is developing its own intellectual property. For example, developing its own software, not a representative of a technology company who's in sales, for example. That wouldn't qualify. You have to actually be creating some type of technology to be in the center.
So you've got to be coding something.
Yeah, or you have someone coding something for you, definitely. And again, it may not be all software. I will say the majority of our companies are business-to-business software as a service startups, so they are in the software space, cross verticals. But we have had a biotech company in the past, and we have a second one currently today. So we do have, and we recently had a graduate who was in the fintech space, but it was an appliance-based fintech device and not software-based.
Okay, I can't even imagine what that would be. An appliance-based fintech. What? Okay, so what is that?
It was a technology that rested on top of another software platform that was to assist banks with fraud and reconciliation and compliance issues.
Okay, with 50 startups, do you pretty much know them? Are you day-to-day working with them?
Yeah, I do pretty much know them. I have a staff of 2. And so my director of operations for the center is really particularly helpful in keeping up with the startups and and helping to make a lot of connections for them, because I have a number of other responsibilities that occasionally will take me out of the office. So I can't always be right there for every one of the startups, but I meet every one of them, typically know them by name, and it's a real community in there. We know each other, we know about each other's families, and that's what the startups like about it. It's a community of like-minded startups.
Okay. No, I can imagine. I know that I know the city, at least I think they used to, keeps a running spreadsheet, if you will, on developments or buildings that are going up in the city. Is there any sort of a running inventory of your startups and where they want to go and where they are in that journey? Or
yes and no. To address your first point about the city's spreadsheet, it's funny you mentioned that, because we just worked on a joint project with the city to do a count of the current number of tech companies, because we like to have that number updated every few years. And so we just released a press release on that topic last week. There's more than 704 technology companies.
Did we gain or lose?
Yeah, we lost. Oh, excuse me. No, we gained. It was 643. Now we're up to 704 in the city. When you think about that, that's really staggering for a city of 25 square mile radius?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing. And then in terms of an inventory of the startups themselves, we maintain our own internal list, obviously, of who our members are and what they do, and keep it updated in terms of what stage they're at, so we know who might be looking for investment dollars and who we might want to connect with investors. But also on our website, we have a member link. And the member companies that have given us permission to put their logo and website link out there are listed on our website. So it's not a complete list, because some of our companies are early stage enough that they still want to fly under the radar.
Okay. So you brought up one topic that I've always been curious about, and maybe some of our listeners are also curious about it. So all of your tech startups, hopefully they will all eventually look for venture funding or angel investors, or they're going to be looking for money. Can you talk to me a little bit about how involved or what role you all play, and how often in helping your incubator pups find and raise money?
Absolutely. And just to give you a good stat, we've been open here at the incubator for 3 years, and in that time our startups have raised more than $20 million in investor funding already, which is a really great track record for a young incubator.
Spread out over roughly how many?
Spread out
would you say?
over, it's probably, I would guesstimate it's close to about 16 to 18. The number is constantly fluid and changing.
Roughly kind of $1 million each.
Yeah. So they've been very successful at that. But we take that role very seriously because, as you mentioned, it's so critical to their success that when time comes that, and most of them do seek funding after bootstrapping it for a while, when the time comes for them to seek funding, we do what we can to try to help make those connections. And a lot of it starts with introductions. We bring investment firms out, VC firms out, I'd say on average about twice a quarter at least. To make a presentation to our startups and do a meet and greet. Sometimes it's more than that. Some quarters it might be 4 or more. Sometimes it might just be 1 or 2. But we do that very regularly. We've intentionally cultivated relationships with the venture capital community in the metro area.
What are a lot of them local, or what's the sort of the balance between?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure they're from everywhere, but
in terms of venture capital firms, there is the one that's based in our center, 1111 Investments, which was the first VC firm headquartered in Alpharetta. And the Leaders Fund that moved out to Alpharetta about a year or so ago from Midtown also has an office out in Alpharetta now instead of Midtown. I'm not currently aware of other VC funds that have offices out here. The rest of them that we work with tend to be Atlanta-based or Southeastern-based firms, but not necessarily in Alpharetta. So, you spend time downtown and you get to know people. And so we've developed a really good base of VC firms and relationships. So we work with those companies. And, the venture capital firms are interested in learning about the next up-and-coming company. So they like for us to keep them updated just as much as we like to have the relationships with them. So it works out great. And they're very open to introductions. And we try to curate and wait until a startup's obviously at the appropriate time and in the appropriate vertical for a particular venture capital firm before we make an introduction. But we're quite active in doing that.
So do you help your companies put together their presentations or coach them on the business plans for the presentation? I guess I always thought, with Shark Tank, it's the entrepreneurs presenting to the people with money, but you flipped it and you said, periodically you get venture capital. They come to the incubator and they are the ones presenting to the startups. This is who we are. This is how much funding we can do. This is what we're looking for, right?
Right.
So I just never thought of it that way. That I think that would be kind of fun to watch. Or
they're very open to coming out. They've been great about coming out and presenting and letting our people know who they are and what their firm's looking for and at what stage they consider startups. And that's all really helpful information to the companies in the incubator.
So I'll ask you a really stupid question.
No question is stupid, Red.
The answer has to be a really generalized answer. But at what point, typically, do you think these companies need to be? When is it time to seek out your first round of venture funding?
It's different for every company. Wisely, they try to bootstrap and get by on friends and family and their own funding for as long as they can. But the stage at which they're looking for funding, typically, not always, but typically happens once they have what's called their MVP, their minimum viable product, their first version of their product out and either in beta testing and pilots with companies or about to be beta tested with companies. That's about the time that we see inquiries about, hey, do you guys know an investor that invested in this type of company? And here's where we're at. But again, it's really specific to the company. So there's definitely no one certain time.
Sure.
And the different investment firms have different requirements for who they'll invest in. Of course, some of them might be looking at a company that has, that's early stage, maybe $1 million in revenues. And some might be, we invest at later stage, $5 to $10 million a year in revenues. So you sort of have to match them up.
I've always thought that perhaps one of the hardest components of starting a business is not so much the creating the business or the product or the service, but it ends up, to me, being the marketing. How do you take it to market? And how do you ramp up sales? But I'm also have the general idea that a lot of the venture funding, maybe most of it, is to hire more code writers and more engineers to flesh out the product and not necessarily to hire the sales team or the marketing team.
Again, while there's it can definitely vary. We do see companies that are seeking investment to ramp up their development staff. More often than not, what we hear or what we have heard has been, we're ready to ramp up and hire a sales team. That's been the more common reason that we've heard. Like we're ready for funding because we really need to create a sales team or hire our first salesperson. It's when they're really ready to get out and start selling.
Okay. Do you help them with that? Where do they find them?
That we don't help with as much unless they come to us and say, hey, do you know anybody that's in payment processing, or do you know anyone that's in a specific area, healthcare, IT, that's our specific customer base. And if we can, we're always amenable to trying to make an introduction or two, but we don't get as many requests for assistance on the sales side as we do with, earlier stage. Hey, can you recommend a CPA firm or a commercial real estate broker or a lawyer or an investor to us? We hear a lot more of that.
Okay. So of your startup companies, could you talk with us just a little bit maybe about a couple of the real success stories?
Yes.
The companies?
Yes, absolutely. So we've had 9 successful graduates to date, which is also a really strong number for a young incubator. And then we've also had one of our companies be acquired, which was relatively recently, a company called Oval Edge in the data analytics space. And so we regard, of course, all the companies that have graduated as terrific success stories, but I'm happy to highlight a couple of them for you.
Sure.
One of the earliest companies in the incubator was a company called Evident ID. They later shortened their name to Evident, and it was identity management software that they had developed. And they outgrew our center after they started having some customer revenues and were ready to really scale up, and also landed an $8.8 million Series A round of venture capital investment, which was just a huge number for any small startup. So that was phenomenally successful, and they're doing very, very well today. They're flourishing. Now, that was one of the two companies that from our incubator that did end up relocating to Midtown because they needed to hire, 10 to 12 fresh out of college engineers. And they felt like the odds were better that they could find them in Midtown than out here.
We're working on that, though, right?
Right, exactly, yeah. Exactly. So that's one example of a great success story. Another one, FarmWave, Craig Gansel's company, was the very first company at the incubator. They started out as a Wi-Fi provider and pivoted to ag tech, agricultural technology, when their founder, Craig Gansel, developed just a blockbuster ag tech solution. And they outgrew the center. They are in commercial office space on Mansell Road and traveling the world. They have customers globally now. Craig's on first name terms with the president of France because France has been very excited about his software solution, and they're doing phenomenally well.
Okay. Wow.
And he's a past chairman of Tech Alpharetta as well. So that's been a great story.
That's very impressive. Ag tech, what did they actually come up with? A way to manage seeds or crops?
It's an AI, artificial intelligence-based software that can be used to identify issues or problems with certain types of crops. So if somebody takes a photo, as I understand it, if you take a photo of a certain type of corn, for example, and it has some kind of a blight on it, the artificial intelligence behind this software, it has a huge database of photos and problems and viruses that can be associated with a crop. It can help identify what your issue is, for example.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, wow, that's impressive. And how long really has the incubator been up and running? I know you started a number of years ago, but I mean, how long has it been really up and running?
I would say really, when it started, it was more of a co-working space back in 2015 as it got going. When I came in the door February 2017, I wanted to evolve it into a bona fide incubator, which meant, not only do we get the word out and engage in heavy marketing of the facility, but we start adding the programs, the mentoring, investor connections, the resources that small businesses, small startups need in order to succeed. So I would say 2017 was really when we evolved into an incubator.
Okay.
So it's really been very recent.
Okay. What sort of a relationship do you have with, what is it, TAG, the Technology
Association of Georgia? We have a great relationship with them. Larry Williams is the president and CEO over there. They have a seat on our board. Larry's very involved. We try to involve a lot of leaders of various local organizations and ecosystems because we view everyone as a community partner at the end of the day. So TAG, Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce, HDC, a number of organizations, Gwinnett Tech, all have a seat on our board, and we're very interested in getting their input in the organization. And really, what I always say is that TAG has a different focus than really what we're doing, and so we are all.
Do they have their own incubator as well?
They don't have their own incubator, but they do host events. So we're all really speaking to a different constituency to some extent, and so we don't view one another as competitors. We view one another as partners and trying to build the ecosystem.
Okay. What I know, but there are other incubators in Atlanta, right?
In Atlanta, yes, and Peachtree Corners has several as well. We're the only one in Alpharetta.
Okay, are most of the incubators publicly funded or?
Great question. So, and I've done a lot of research on this, so I can answer your question with some specifics. Incubators, because of the very nature of what they're doing, they're trying to foster and help startups to grow. So by their very nature, they're doing a level of subsidizing those startups from a real estate standpoint as they start to grow. For that reason, incubators can't sustain themselves independently from a financial standpoint. They can't be financially independent. So what we see is they're either investor funded. For example, Atlanta Tech Village, David Cummings put about $25 million or so into that facility and that incubator. So it's investor funding or it's corporate funding. Comcast, that's running the farm over in Cobb County, the farm is their incubator. That's corporate funding there. Or it's municipal funding. It could be city or it could be an educational institution that's funding it. So, for example, Peachtree Corners has an incubator called Prototype Prime that receives funding from the city of Peachtree Corners. Okay. We receive some funding from the city of Alpharetta. ATDC receives funding through taxpayer money from the state of Georgia. ATDC, that's Advanced Technology Development Center. That is the 40-year-old incubator, kind of the grandfather of them all, the first one that started out of Georgia Tech and is still run as part of Georgia Tech today.
With all these institutions and acronyms and everything, is there a guide or a?
There are several. And I can provide you with the websites. I'll probably have to email them to you to make sure that I've got the accurate URL for you. But there's several websites I can direct you to for the sake of your listeners as well, where they list the area incubators in the metro Atlanta area. If someone has an interest in seeing what's going on in our building, we're always happy to provide them with a tour. We don't have a lot of street visibility, so sometimes a lot of people don't realize we're back there. Okay. Since we're behind the fire station, but yes, there is a building behind the fire station, and it's actually a thriving incubator. So anybody's welcome to stop by and check it out. And with regards to Tech Alpharetta in general, I would just say that we run educational and thought leadership events for tech execs here in Alpharetta. And the reason we started that, originally I started that under the Greater Alpharetta Tech Network, the nonprofit that I'd created about 5 years back and ultimately merged into Tech Alpharetta. But the reason for that is, just as we all know, the traffic is getting worse and worse to get from here into Buckhead, Midtown, downtown. There's great tech programming going on in Atlanta, but most of us have a very hard time to get down there. I can't make a 7:30 a.m. meeting in Midtown, right? So for that reason, it made sense to start having tech events out here where people were living and working to make it convenient for them to attend. So that's really the reason why we started hosting them out here. And of course, there's such a wealth of technology talent out here that it's made it very easy to find really dynamic presenters willing to share their stories and experience of, how they built their companies or how they sold their company for $500 million, or just to provide the question everyone wants. That's right. To. So so there's just been a phenomenal amount of material.
Okay, and typically that's like monthly. You'll put on have a speaker?
Yes. So we hold those monthly. It's either a speaker or a panel, and we have several pure networking mixers a year for tech execs by request of the local community. We mix those in as well. But yes, and they can go to our website, techalpharetta.com, or subscribe to our e-newsletter to find out what's coming up next.
Perfect. I will be going to techalpharetta.com and signing up for the newsletter.
Fantastic.
It sounds fantastic. Well, Karen, I think we've covered most of the big stuff.
I think so.
We appreciate you coming in, and I will look forward to those URLs.
Yes, I'll get those to you.
And I will, if you'll allow me, I want to come take a tour.
Yes, please do. Love to show you around.
All right, I'll do it. Well, that's a wrap for Boardroom Buddha. With Karen Cashion, CEO of Alpharetta Tech.
Tech Alpharetta.
Tech Alpharetta.
Yes.
TechAlpharetta.com. Thank you, Karen, for joining us for the show, and thank all of y'all for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for Boardroom Buddha and rate the show. We can be followed on Twitter at Buddha Boardroom, and you can also access all the App and Podcast Network channels on northfulton.com/podcasts. Have a great day, and remember, in the words of Steve Jobs, good is never enough.